So good evening and warm welcome at the Thinking Palette platform. In this video, I will discuss the test 8, which is again on the second part of the syllabus which has been given to you under the ethics. So we will look into each and every question comprehensively in the next couple of the slides. So now the very first question is, in the context of public service, what does responsibility mean? And what measures can be adopted to ensure individual and collective responsibility? First of all, in this question, you will have to define responsibility with the example. So now, responsibility can be defined in such a way that it is an obligation to carry out certain functions in the public service. Now, what you can do that any person can delegate his powers. For example, IS officer can delegate his power, but he can never delegate the responsibility. For example, something happens in his district with respect to law and order, and he has delegated the function of the law and order to SDM, Tehsildar, for example. Then also they will not be responsible. He will be the responsible, being the king of the district. King सुनने से तुम्हें बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा होगा. Okay, being the king of the district. So now here example which can be given is, a district magistrate is responsible for the welfare of citizen in his district, and he may carry out his function through his subordinate, but ultimate responsibility lies on him. And just like you can also talk about the ethical responsibility, or you can define the responsibility from the ethical perspective. So what is the meaning of the ethical perspective of responsibility is, we all know that in India, public service has a responsibility to achieve the goals which is mentioned in the constitution. And what is mentioned in the constitution? That is social and economic justice. So basically, the very first job of any bureaucrat is his responsibility to achieve the ideals of social and economic justice. Now, what you can infer from this discussion is that whenever I am talking about the ethics, I try to bring the governance perspective and to link it with the ethical perspective. This is very important, that along with the ethical perspective, there should be certain kinds of the administrative part of your answer. There should be certain kind of governance reflection in your answer, because ultimately you are going to be an IS officer or the other public servants. Okay, so now after that, what you can do, you can also make one table and then highlight that what is the dimension of ethical responsibility. Dimension of ethical responsibility. Here you can say the very first dimension is that you will have to display empathy and compassion. Second, you can talk about that he should reveal the value of objectivity and leadership. Then you can talk about display highest standards of integrity. Then you can say that to uphold the rule of law. This is a very basic responsibility of any public servant. So after discussing all this, you have basically attempted the first part of the question. Now the second part of the question is that how you are going to achieve, or what measures can be adopted to ensure individual and collective responsibility. So under the head of measures, what I can think of, that the very first thing, that there should be code of ethics and code of conduct. Basically, this will give the bureaucrat or any public servant a direction in which he needs to work in order to achieve the individual and collective responsibility. Second thing, you can talk about the legal framework. The legal frameworks here simply means that there should be the law that will that will punish the abuse of power. And there should be some legal provision for the poor performance and inefficiency. Poor performance and inefficiency. I am not talking about that there should be imprisonment for them, but yes, there should be certain framework to look into that why the public servants are inefficient. Then you can talk about institutional framework, and here we can talk about that how we can strengthen CVC, Lokpal, etc. Then you can talk about the new models of the governance, and there you can talk about the social audit. Because social audit will ensure that or will highlight that the public servant is responsible or not, because some lacunas which has been highlighted in the social audit needs to be addressed by that public servant. So basically he will be responsible to the output of the social auditing. So this can be mentioned in this question. So now moving to the next question, that is, ethics in public administration can be considered as a form of self accountability. In this question, what you can do or what you don't need to do or what you should do, these are the three things which you need to focus upon. Most of you will do that, defining the ethics and defining the self accountability in a separate form or in a separate paragraph, but it is not required. Then what is required? That you will have to talk about that how ethics and the self accountability is interrelated. But for the understanding, I am talking about first ethics, then self accountability. But in examination, whenever I will discuss this part from here, your answer should start from here. But here just it is a understanding. First of all, you can or you know that ethics is nothing but a systematic study of human action. That his action is right or wrong. That his action is full of righteousness or not. Or you can say that the ethics is a set of standards that a society places on itself and which helps or which guides the behavior and choices of the people along with action. And self accountability simply means that you are answerable to no one, but you are answerable for your behavior and action to yourself. And you are accountable to your conscience. Understood? This is the difference between the ethics and this is the difference between ethics and self accountability whenever we are addressing it separately. But if you are not writing this much in your answer as it is a 10 marker, you should start your answer from here. And you can simply say that the self accountability is answerability to oneself or answerability to one's conscience. And therefore, all the qualities that a public servant should uphold, for example, integrity, accountability, objectivity, non partisanship, each and every value can be upheld only when the public servant is accountable to himself. Because whenever you are accountable to your boss, to your superior, then there may be the chance that if the time permits or if the circumstances permits, then you will not be accountable. But if you are accountable to your conscience, then every time you will be accountable. So it is not based on the time, it is based on the behavior, that you will always behave in the form to achieve the social accountability and sorry, self accountability. And it is very important because there cannot be CCTV camera all the time to look into your action. Therefore, whenever you go to your bed in the night or whenever you awake on the early morning, your conscience should tell you that yes, your last night was full of satisfaction. It is because your last day was full of accountability for the public service. This should be in your mind whenever you are going to or aspiring to be a public servant. Understood? So now after that, how the self accountability is the cornerstone of the ethics. Now the second part which we need to address is here what you can do. You will have to give certain examples if you want to make your answer too much comprehensive and if you want to fetch more marks than your competitors. So what you can do here is you can make a subheading that self accountability is a cornerstone of ethics. Just make a subheading. After that, write it down. It is who you are and what you do when no one is watching. because every time there cannot be CCTV camera, no one is watching. Just I am giving you one example that there is a biometric attendance system in the schools, in the organization. Why there is a need of biometric attendance? Because the people are not self accountable. पीपल यहाँ पे क्या है इंडिया में कि जब तक डंडा नहीं पड़ेगा तब तक दंडा नीति यहाँ सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है. जब तक तुम कुछ करोगे नहीं किसी को कोई सुनने वाला बात नहीं है तुम्हारी बात. तो सेल्फ अकाउंटेबिलिटी इज दैट यू आर अकाउंटेबल इवन इफ नो वन इज वाचिंग यू. देन यू कैन से that a person who is self accountable, he will be answerable and responsible. He will be answerable and responsible. He will pick the phone even in the midnight, okay, because he is self accountable. And then you can give certain example that a public servant, for example, there is a Swachh Bharat mission, okay, and you have been the in charge at the district level for the implementation of Swachh Bharat. Now what you are doing, that you are putting a lot of regulation on the use of plastic, for example, or you are putting a lot of regulation in order to check open defecation, but you himself is not obeying and you are throwing the plastic after using it on the road. So basically you are not accountable, okay, just you are putting the regulation for the others. So basically this certain examples can be given in this answer, and then you can conclude that as the saying goes, no matter where you go, there you are. In the other words, if you are dishonest in your personal life, you are likely to be dishonest in your professional affairs. Likewise, if you are dishonest with a friend, then which is a general public in the case of public servant interest is also at the risk. Matlab कि whenever you are dishonest with the friend, you are dishonest with the public. And if you are dishonest with the public, then obviously it will be very easy for you to become dishonest with the friend. So these are the things which can be mentioned in this answer. Now moving to the next question, that is John Rawls' ideas of international framework is valid for different political regimes without any exception. So most of you may have the idea about the John Rawls, and most of you do not know anything about the John Rawls. But even the students who had the political science as a background, even he or she does not know anything about the John Rawls and his ideas of international framework. They can know veil of ignorance, they can know about the John Rawls and the communitarian criticism, procedural reflective consensus, but that is of no use. You don't need to know anything about the John Rawls. You should focus here about the international framework, and in such question just understand that what kind of international framework do you want. So this is very easy for everyone to write this question. So what you can do here is you can say, without mentioning the John Rawls also this answer can be written. You can say simply that states are free and independent. We all know that the states are sovereign and no state should interfere into the affairs of another state. So basically you can say that states are free and independent and their freedom and independence must be respected. Example, USA invasion of Iraq. तुम्हारा एग्जाम्पल भी हो गया बिना कुछ सोचे, और जॉन रॉल्स ने भी कह दिया. क्या देखो, जॉन रॉल्स क्या कह सकते हैं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं कह सकते हैं जो तुम्हें नहीं पता है. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज you can talk about that states should follow the treaties and undertakings. Here you can say that the Western countries are not following the treaties like WTO and UN Charter. That's all. Next, third point, you can say that states have right to self-defense. Obviously, every state have a right of self-defense. Here you can say that India is known to India is known to be a land of Buddha. But when the matter is of the self-defense, for example, Doklam and the recent Galwan Valley crisis, this can be written here. Then you can talk about that states should honor human rights. Then you can say that the European Union have basically condemned and repealed the capital punishment of any type. तो देखो हर चीज में मैंने अपना एक एग्जांपल भी डाल दिया. तो अब क्या दिक्कत है, जॉन रॉल्स से मतलब ही नहीं, मुझे बहुत नंबर मिलने वाले हैं, और जो जॉन रॉल्स के इंटरनेशनल फ्रेमवर्क जानते हैं उनको बहुत कम नंबर मिलने वाले हैं, ये भी बता देता हूं मैं. ओके, एंड देन लास्ट यू कैन आल्सो टॉक अबाउट that there should be certain kind of, or you can say that there should be conduct of war. There should be the restrictions in the conduct of war. and states should assist or cooperate with each other. And now you can talk about the climate change, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, where the states needs to cooperate. Now this question becomes very easy to address. There is nothing to be related to the John Rawls. Now the next question is evaluate the success of RTI in bringing the governance reforms. Examine that whether it has served the purpose it was meant for or not. Basically, this question is very simple. If you know that what was the intention behind putting the RTI, then you will find that second ARC says that the RTI will help in achieving transparency, accountability, participation, and predictability. So basically, this can be your introduction. After that, you can say that the very first success of RTI is that now there is a culture of asking question. Earlier, it was a culture of secrecy, and now it has been transformed into culture of transparency. Then you can say that it is a strong deterrent against any wrongdoing, because you know, or any organization knows that if they are doing something wrong, then based on the RTI, the people or the activist can have the information, and it can bring disrepute to their organization. It can happen. Then you can talk about that what we have achieved through the RTI. Then you can say RTI helped in citizen participation, first of all. Second, it has helped in democratizing of the information. And democratizing of information is very important in the age of digital India and data-led governance. Then it has empowered a common people. There was one person in Maharashtra, he has directly contacted to Mr. Fadnavis when he was the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. And based on the RTI, he has talked to CM and said that the material which is being used in the dam construction is of low quality, and the CM has to intervene directly. So basically, it has empowered the common people. Okay, and these are the things which you can mention as the part of the success of the RTI. Now in the examine, you will have to examine, so basically you need to highlight some of the criticism with the RTI also. So basically you are putting nothing but RTI challenges, and there you can talk about the procedural challenge or the functional challenges. Then you can talk about logistical challenges. In the logistical challenges, you can talk about the poor record keeping. If you do not have a proper record keeping, then how you can give the information? There is the first challenge, and this is one of the obstacle in delivering or disseminating the information. Functional. Then you can talk about functional. For example, in Maharashtra, again there is an issue. In Maharashtra, whenever you will send an RTI, you will get a reply from the organization that proper fees format has not been followed. Then who has the authority, or basically then whose responsibility is to tell that what is the correct format? It is the responsibility of the government organization, but they are not telling that what is the correct fees format, but just rejecting the application based on that the fees format has not been followed. Procedural. Here you can talk about Official Secret Act 1923, Evidence Act, Atomic Energy Act. Basically all this act protects the dissemination of the information. Based on that, it is a state secret, it is a highly confidential and classified matter that cannot be disseminated to the people. And then you can talk about certain suggestions you are also required to give in such question. And then yes, you can say that the proper training and the strengthening of the regional organization can be done. And for the record keeping, you can talk about the strengthening logistic. And how you can strengthen the logistic is by cataloging and indexing of record. You can say in Bihar there is 24 into 7 toll free number. That is another thing, that whenever you will call they will not receive, or busy aata hai ye number, but there is a toll free number where you can access 24 into 7 for the information under RTI. So that can be implemented at pilot basis in the different states. Then you can talk about the training and monitoring at the state level. because the state, that is a State Information Commission, is not effective as compared to CIC, Chief Information Commission. Understood? So these are the things which can be written in this question. So now the next question is, what are the various components of the organizational work culture, and what are the key issues that needs to be addressed in any organization to create a more developmental and performance oriented culture? Here what you can do, first of all, you can define in this question that what is work culture, and then secondly you will move to the component of the organizational work culture. So work culture is that it represents the values, beliefs, and principles of the organizational members. And also it is a product of history, for example Tata, and it also product of market, technology, strategy, business strategy, marketing strategy. Everything is the part of the work culture. So by introducing the meaning of the work culture, the next part is component of the work culture. So here you can talk about the vision and values. What is the vision and the values? It will be reflected into the work culture. For example, Google value might be best articulated by their famous phrase that don't be evil. This is the phrase of Google. Then you can talk about the symbols, logo. The logo of any company represents the beliefs, ideas, and the expectations of the employees and the customers. Then you can talk about behavioral norms, that what behavior is expected or what behavior is accepted in the organization. It should be clearly mentioned, and this is one of the component of the organizational work culture. Now the next component of the organizational work culture is histories, and also you can talk about status and the role of personal. Status here simply refers to hierarchical positions and the prestige of an employee within the organization. And the history is about that, for example, Steve Jobs. So it is said that Steve Jobs' early fascination with the calligraphy shaped the aesthetic oriented culture at the Apple. So basically, whatever the history for, or whatever the background of the organization is, whatever the background of the leader of that organization is, will shape the culture of the organization. Then the next part of the question is, what are the key issues to be addressed? So first of all, you need to understand that what is the key issue. Then only you can go for that how it can be addressed. The very first thing is communication gap in the organization. And hierarchy is very rigid in our organization. Then you can talk about that no company can build a coherent culture without the people who share their core values and possess the willingness to embrace those values. That's why the greatest firm in the world also have some of the most stringent recruiting policies. So basically, what point I want to mention here is recruiting policies should be very clear and straightforward, that one who can or one who has the ability to basically to adhere to the principles and the values of the organization, they will only be recruited. So these are the things which can be mentioned in the key issue. How you will solve the issue of the communication? For that you will have to go for teamwork. For that we will have to go for the meetings, that should be the regular meeting, and frequency of the meeting should be fixed, so that the communication can become strong between the organizations and between the boss and the subordinates. So these are the things which can be mentioned here. Now this question is, what do you understand by civil virtue? Okay, sorry, it should be civic virtue. Okay, so now what do you understand by the civic virtue in the public life? First of all, you will have to write it down about the civic virtue, that what do you understand by the word civic virtue, and then the second part will be the challenges, and then the third part will be suggestion to overcome the challenges. So now the very first thing is civic virtue is nothing but a morality or a standard of righteousness behavior in relation to the citizens or the fellow citizens of the society. For example, if you are following certain moral standards, then the same moral standards you will apply to all the people living in your mohalla. So basically, this is the basis of civic virtue. And any society, whether it is a liberal society or whether it is an individualistic society, everywhere certain kinds of civic virtue needs to be maintained. For example, you can give certain civic virtue in your, from your daily life also, whenever you are going to the park, that is the Vivekanand Park in the old Rajendra Nagar, then most of the times you will see that the people are roaming on the same platform on which the people are running along with their dogs. So does it signify that they have a good civic virtue, because that pedestrians or that platform is for the running and jogging, and you are what you are doing, that you are roaming on that particular platform with your dogs. So but this is a very simple thing, but this will reflect that how much observant you are in your life. So basically then you can talk about the citizen. Civic virtue simply means that whether you are paying the tax on the time or not, whether you are going for vote or not, whether you are volunteering or not. For example, COVID-19, whether you have distributed some of the food grains to the needy ones according to your capacity or not, and maintaining cleanliness, whether you are doing all this or not. So this is the part of the civic virtue. So basically this part can be addressed like this. Now the second part is about the challenges. Why there is challenges in civic virtue of our life, how we are, what are the problems we are facing in civic virtue. The very first thing you can mention is growing individual. जैसे दिल्ली में हमारे तरफ क्या होता है कि हर एक दूसरा आदमी एक दूसरे को जानता है. But in Delhi, your neighbor doesn't know that who are you. And even in the case of crisis, you cannot call to your neighbor or he cannot call to you, because there is a rising sense of growing individualism. And also there is a competition because the resources are limited, not only in urban areas but also in the rural areas. But it is highly visible that there is a cutthroat competition in the urban areas, and everyone tries to extract the maximum for the self and leave minimum, or minimum kya, leave zero for the others. Then you can talk about all this growing individualism and competition leading to lack of trust. And when there is a lack of trust in the society, then you can think of that what kind of society we are building. And then these are the things. After mentioning the challenges, next part is about the solution and how can the challenges be overcome. So now the challenges can be overcome like this. First of all, you can talk about that we will have to promote the civic education. When I was in class 8, there was a book on moral education. Okay, but after some time I think that the moral book or the book on the moral education has been deleted from the CBSE course. So basically the promote civic education is very important. Then if there is certain example in the society, then everybody aspires to lead by the example. So whenever you look to your political leaders, to your volunteers, to the social servants, then basically it will give a certain kind of boost to you for to do something for the society. Then you can talk about awareness about rights and duties. Awareness about rights and duties. The people knows only about the fundamental right. जिसको देखो right चाहिए, but no one is ready to go for or to perform their duties. So these are the things which can be mentioned in this question. Now this question is basically on the view of the Immanuel Kant on the categorical imperative. So basically you will have to first talk about that what do you understand by categorical imperative, then you can talk about whether there is a conflict between morality and freedom or not. So according to Kant, categorical imperative is the objective moral law and it is binding on all of us. So it must be performed without any kind of condition. You cannot say that I cannot follow certain moral law based on my circumstances, because it is binding on you irrespective of your will. Therefore, it appears that categorical imperative is against human freedom, because it is not giving any kind of freedom to you that whether you can or whether you will do this or not, you will have to do this. So this is the meaning of categorical imperative. And whenever you are talking about the freedom in defining the categorical imperative, you are going to establish the relation between the second statement and the first statement. Then you can say that there is always a conflict between our will and moral duty. But it does not mean that we will suppress the moral duty or we will suppress our will. We don't need to suppress anything, we will have to reconcile the two. But at the same time, Kant has also said that God is a moral governor and psychological booster to make morality easy for us. For example, if we don't want to do anything based on our will, if we want to do something on our will and that will is coming in the front of moral duty, at that time, the God will help us to make the morality easy for us. Okay, so these are the things which you can mention. After that, you will have to talk about that there is a conflict or not. Then you can argue this conflict is more apparent than real. Yes, you will have to agree that yes, there is a conflict, but that conflict is not real in the sense, and you will have to give the reason for that. Okay, then you can say that the conflict is apparent than real because of the following reasons. First, morality is the command of the reason. Morality is the command of the reason. Actually, Kant regards reason as the special attribute of the human beings, and morality is the command of the practical reason. It simply means that when the person looks into anything from the perspective of rationality or having the reason in that, then morality is the output of the rationality and application of the reason. So there will not be any kind of issue or challenge. Then you can talk about free will is a necessary postulate of morality. Kant himself recognized, Kant has not said that if you are doing any kind of morality and you need to impeach your freedom. Kant has never said that. Kant has said that the free will is necessary for the morality to be followed. Because if you will not go by the will, obviously, in the next circumstances, in the next coming of time, you will not follow any kind of morality. So he can say that without free will is necessary, without which morality is not possible, because nobody can be held morally responsible for their action. And this is the thing which you can mention in this answer. This is a very philosophical question, so there is nothing much to write, just you will have to address the demand of the question. Now, question number 8. This question is very practical in the sense that we all know that the international peace and security is the pillar of international relation, but often narrowed down by the vested interest. Here in this question, you will have to talk about that what are the arrangements of the peace and security which we have. After the Second World War, UN and UN Charter is the basis of the peace and security. It is being considered that the UN is the only organization because of which we have not witnessed the Third World War. And also for the peace and security, security does not mean only about the national security. It also about the food security. It is also about the energy security. It is also about the water security. So basically all the kinds of security, and there is certain institution to look into. Otherwise what will happen, there will be chaos and aggression amongst the countries. For example, if there is a water scarcity in the South Asian region, obviously the downstream countries will feel the shortage of water, and there will be a disturbance in the peace and security in the region. Likewise, you can also talk about the Indian Ocean, because the Indian Ocean is in the news very much because of Indo-Pacific. Then you can talk about the security on the water is also required. The first thing which you need to talk about the international peace and security in the introduction, you can write it down. After that, you need to talk about something philosophical about the peace and the security, that why the peace and security is required. Why peace and security is required? Because everyone has a right to live in, has a right to live in free and without fear environment. That the environment should be free and there should not be any kind of fear. But whenever there is a matter of nuclear proliferation, whenever there is a danger of terrorism, then how the person can live in fear environment? Okay, so basically why peace is required, you can write it down. Then you can say that peace is also required to look into that all the state or all the country should grow equally, otherwise the peace will be disturbed. Then you can see why the peace and security is required. It is because to achieve the higher common good. Higher common good. These are the things which you can write after mentioning the international peace and security के pillars के बारे में. इसके बाद ये बातें लिख दो. And then vested interest. Obviously vested interest, there are a lot of examples about the vested interest. You can talk about USA considering the axis of evil. Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq was the axis of evil for George Bush. Then you can talk about the China's growing dominance in the South China Sea, Indian Ocean. Then you can talk about the no countries following the international organization like WHO, Paris Agreement. Then basically you can talk about the violation of treaties, UN Charter or UN treaties have been violated by the Western countries. These are the things which you can write in the answer. Now coming to the question number 9, that what do you understand by the good governance and ethical governance? The question looks very simple, but in the examination you will find difficult in defining the good governance and the ethical governance because both look same. And sometimes the good governance and ethical governance is used interchangeably. So first of all, you will have to understand that what is good governance. Okay. Good governance is basically, you all know that it has been given by the World Bank in 1990, and it is a value-based governance which makes the public administration more open, transparent, accountable, participative. There are different elements of the good governance given by the World Bank. Ethical governance. I will give you an example, then it will be easy for you to understand. Ethical governance brings the ethical element in the governance. For example, compassion, empathy, trustworthiness, loyalty, non-partisanship. These are the value-laden non-participative. Sorry, this is not non-participation, this is non-partisanship. Non-partisanship, okay? So basically, this is a value-laden approach of the ethical governance. Now, if I will have to talk about the difference between the good governance and the ethical governance, I can give you the example. And the same example can be used, which I have discussed in the last video about the compassionate bureaucrat. For example, you are a collector of a district and the scheme is with respect to distribution of houses under housing for all. Okay. So you are distributing the house according to the rule in a transparent way. This is a good governance. But when an old lady comes to you and requests to allot the house to her, but she does not have relevant documents, now you have to make a choice based on the rules and empathy. And then what you can do is that you can first focus upon that how her documents can be prepared. And whenever you are focusing upon the documents to be prepared, then you are moving towards the ethical governance. This is the difference between the good governance and ethical governance. Next, the part of the question is about the views of Mahatma Gandhi. We all know that the views of the Mahatma Gandhi is based on oceanic circles of the decentralization. He was of the view that the village should form the city, city should form the state, state should form the nation. So it is a bottom-up approach. And why he was of this view? Because he thinks that for the welfare of the people, because all the schemes are basically focusing upon the welfare of the people living here. So they should be the participant in the governance process. And therefore, he was also of the view that all the stakeholders in the society should get the resources in a fair, just, and non discriminatory way. And his governance is not only about the social cohesion and the political ideas, but it is also about that how the economic equality can be achieved through this model of governance. Therefore, he was focusing upon the khadi industries, MSME. He was not against the mass production, but he wants that production should be by the masses. So this is the, and now the next thing that you will also have to talk about the applicability. So now whenever you are looking to the capitalist system and how the capitalist system is leading to inequality, the Mahatma Gandhi ideas on the governance is a way out. So you can say that applicability, Gandhi become much more important in the world of individualism, in the world of growing materialism, in the world of growing capitalism. Gandhi is of the view that the benefits should be reached to the people equally, and all should, and also the person who is standing on the last of the line should get the benefit equally. Then you can talk about that today the government is focusing upon MSME. Today the government is talking about the women entrepreneur in the village. These are the things which can be mentioned in the answer. Now coming to the question number 10. Question number 10 is a case study where the three people are involved. First is your friend. Second is his boss. And third, you are also involved as a stakeholder because the case study is demanding that something has happened and your friend has tweaked the law or has made a tweak in the law, and that law is favoring the industrialist. So basically the case study asks you that whether you will support your friend or not, because you know that your friend and his boss is honest person and the person having the integrity, but he has done something with the law which is favoring the companies. So this is the condition in which you need to support or whether you will not support your friend. Okay, so the ethical issues which is involved here is with respect to the trust. He is your friend and he has broken the trust of you because you consider himself as a honest. There is also a lack of commitment to the public servant, lack of commitment to the public service which is being shown here. Okay, and there is also a likely chance that when he was tweaking the rule and that has benefited some of the pharma companies, he has also earned something. So basically corruption and the bribery is also involved. That is the value, or you can say that the oath to the constitution has been defeated by your friend. So these are the things which can be mentioned here. After that, the question is asking that whether you will support your friend or not. So obviously you may agree or you may not agree, but I will suggest that you should not agree to such circumstances. You can say that no matter what circumstances is tweaking of the law for the favor, basically he has tweaked the law, and that is if the tweaking of the law is against the public interest and it is in the interest of some people, then basically no matter what circumstances is, you have denied or basically you have abused the power, and now you cannot be said as an honest person. And tweaking the law, you have also you have basically tweaking the law, you have also not abide by the idea of the honest taxpayer and use of his money. So basically you will not support your friend because it is reflecting that the personal interest is over the public interest. And serving the people, because basically whenever you are in the public service, your job is to serve the people. But in the adverse circumstances, the ethical values of the civil servant is much reflected during the time of the crisis. And honesty and integrity is of utmost importance, which you have not shown, and you have tweaked the law. And the second part of the question is talking about that what do you understand by the difference between the tweaking of the law and the breaking of the law. Okay, breaking of the law simply means that you are not abiding by the provisions of the law, and bending of the law is you are using the loopholes in the law. Okay, for example, RTI. Okay, now RTI says that you will have to provide information. Every citizen has right of information. So whenever the too much RTI applicants is received by the public authority, and due to the heavy workload, suppose if the public authority rejects any RTI application on that ground, he is not breaking the law, he is bending the law. Okay. Likewise, someone is doing corruption, someone is doing any kind of financial corruption. Okay. Now, it may be the case that he has not break the law, but he has used the loopholes in the law, and we have observed that such kind of things mostly happens at the case of PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering and Benami Transaction Act. So these are the acts where the loopholes are being used, and it is being bended in the favor of some person rather than breaking of the law. So these are the things which can be mentioned here. Now the last case study is about the different kinds of crimes in schools and colleges is increasing, and these crimes is perpetrated both by the students and teachers on many occasions. So basically the issues involved here is that we understand that the school is the foundation of the values in the life of the student, but and the teacher is being considered as the guide to infuse the values, but here the case study says that both teacher and school are engaged in some kind of crimes here. So what do these events reflect on education and society? The very first thing that is being reflected is school violence is nothing but a representation of the social fractures. The teacher who is doing crime in the school is likely to do the crime in the society also. And also this is a reflection of the family values. For example, if the students are taking the drug in the school, going for the murder in the school, then basically it is a reflection of the, maybe the reflection of the family also. So this point can be written here. Second thing is that this will reflect that school violence failed to meet the psychological strengthening of the students. They are not in position to infuse the psychological strength. Okay, so that may result into some kind of violent behavior, negative emotions, and that negative emotions can be observed in the case of society and at the homes also, because the behavior, if something changing, then it will be reflected in the other organizations and the other institutions also. Then you can talk about that the impact of violent television program, you can say. Okay, then you can talk about the education today is more focusing upon the marks rather than the value education. We are not going for the value education. So these are the things which can be mentioned here. Now the next part of the case study is talking about that what are the measures needed to prevent such crimes. So now measures needed to prevent such crimes can be divided into that the preventive and punitive measures that needs to be taken. So what kind of preventive measures that can be taken is that the school and the management committee should give training to the teachers about how to create the friendly environment in the classroom. Basically they need to give the training, then they need to give a new kinds of training in the context of rising violence. Then you can talk about that there can be parent and family based programs, because there are too many broken homes and there is a lot of issue between husband and wife, and that has a reflection on the behavior of the students. So basically these programs can teach the skills that how to communicate to the students and how to communicate to the parents, that their behavior is being the reflected on the behavior of the students. Then you can talk about there can be some kind of mentorship program. There's maybe engagement of the students in certain kind of co-curricular activities. So this can be done. Now in the punitive, you can talk about that the conviction needs to be increased in such kind of cases. These are the larger community, and NGO can also play an important role, and they can make the effort to teach the youth that how to address the issue like drug abuse, social anxieties, because NGO people are much more experienced in tackling such issues, drug abuse and suicide, tendency of suicide, everything can be mentioned here. So this is the discussion of the class. This is the discussion of the test 8 of the ethics, and in this way we have completed the entire test which we have committed with you. Thanks a lot.